What's up, everybody? Welcome back to another episode of the MLB Swing for the Fences show here on the Run for Your Sports YouTube channel, talking Monday's 12-game MLB slate. Big slate of baseball tonight, of course, and joined as usual on Mondays by Mr. JT Hayes. JT, how's your weekend, and how you doing on this Monday afternoon?
Good weekend. It was beautiful weather down in Atlanta. Just picture perfect. It's not yet hot. It's still just beautiful and comfortable, not a cloud in the sky. And then saying in Discord on Saturday night, ran a little bit pure with a top of the ninth inning home run, DC, from JJ Bleday to help me get into first place in a tournament. And so it was good. It was good for a lot of people in the RPS community. I'm glad that you're here. I'm glad that you're not, you haven't given up on the no alcohol pledge after the way that your weekend went. It's very nice to see you, and better days are ahead, regardless of what happens in Denver later on this week. I think that you're going to make it to the other side.
Yeah. Wolves came back to earth. Yeah, that's an understatement, Mr. James Sarconi there. Tough weekend for the Wolves. Friday, Sunday wasn't a lot of fun. I did manage to jump off the train for the most part before yesterday's game. I've been through this Timberwolves team, 38 years old now. Been around the block a few times with the Wolves team, so definitely got overzealous. Not the first nor the last time I'm sure I'll jump the gun on a team or a player that bought in. So bought into the Wolves too early, and now I'm like 2 games that I'm like on the other side of the coin, JT, where I don't know. I think they might be drawn kind of slim here against Dallas. And no, PTK, I was betting on them every game against the Suns and the first 2 games against the Nuggets. So I'm still firmly in the black on the Timberwolves. Yes, did take a little bit of a hit these last 2 days, but it's all good.
CTK, a big fan of Mark Zuckerberg, apparently, which is a little bit disturbing. But DC, I don't know if you were in the Discord at all yesterday. I spent a little time in there throughout the games, and 2 of the wildest things, but totally that you would expect in our Discord. First of all, before the game start, K Reed, our guy K Reed, is in there, and he says the free guy for the Yankees, who's the 9-hitter, Jahmai Jones, 2K flat. He goes, couldn't hit a ball off a tee. So I immediately said, K Reed, you know what happens now. And of course, second at bat of the game, boom, Jahmai Jones, home run. Later on in the games, Paul Goldschmidt strikes out, and the Discord's going crazy about how he should retire. He's terrible. Alex, who's in here, sending a picture of him looking like he's 60. And I said, incoming 2 bombs, guaranteed. Goldschmidt's next at bat, boom, home run. Along with, I don't like to say this because I know that you were one of the guys that locked him in, along with a Zach Wheeler fade. It was a very exciting day in the Discord yesterday, DC. A lot of fun kidding around with the guys, and we'll see what we find on tonight's slate.
Yeah, I don't actually believe in like the jinx thing or
it's just uncanny though. I don't believe in it either, but it's just uncanny when
it does seem to happen a lot. We talk about too. We shit on the player on the show, and inevitably they seem to have a big game. I'm sure it's just we remember the ones that do, and forget about all the ones that don't. But it does seem to have some effect. And it's like there's no way me chirping about the Wolves had absolutely any effect on them laying an egg those 2 games. But you can't help but feel like it. You know what I mean? It's like, man, if I just shut up, maybe they would have kept winning. Of course,
you kind of paid a little more acutely when you say that a guy can't hit a ball off a tee, and then boom, his second at bat, and he was, he wasn't the key to winning that slate. The Yankees were the key, and actually, Gleyber Torres hit a home run later on, so he actually had more fantasy points at the same position. But it just has to sting a little more when you're in there chirping about how terrible a guy is, he should retire, and then he just gives you the fist right where it's not the most comfortable.
Yeah, that's me on my Wolves tweets. It's like, my favorite team already losing money on them, and now every time they lose a game, I got to get quote tweeted by like 30 different people with my saying the line should be 14.5, not 4.5. So it's just it rubs salt in the wounds, and I'm not going to delete the tweets. I'll leave them up. I'll let people dunk on me. I thought about it, but no, I'll leave them up there and let people have their fun. But enough basketball talk, enough reminiscing about yesterday's MLB slate. We got to get on to today. We do got 12 games to talk about, so let's jump right in there. Hit the like button if you're here. Got 150 people watching. Does help us out a lot. So hit the like button, and let's get to it. Boston, Tampa Bay up first. This one in Boston. Pretty good weather there today, 60, 65 degrees. Winds blowing out to left center field. Two righties on the hill. Cutter Crawford going for the Boston Red Sox. Zach Eflin pitching for Tampa. We saw Eflin last year kind of have that breakout season for the Rays. He's kind of doing a similar thing this year. Maybe the ERA not quite as good, but he's looked solid, kind of as expected. And then Crawford has been, one of the breakout pitchers, I would say, early on this season. He's been, solid in pretty much every start and pretty damn good in a few of them. So I do think he's interesting here. I do like targeting this Rays team, especially with right-handers. Crawford does have a pretty good slider that I think he can get some good swings and misses, a lot of strikeouts in this Rays team. And I think Crawford at 8,600 is an interesting play. Overall, pitching on this 12-game slate, I'm not super enthusiastic, frankly, about most of it. So Crawford does make the cut. I don't love, obviously, the pitching environment in Fenway is not great, but on this slate, I do think Crawford needs to be considered. I have less interest personally in Zach Eflin. I'm just not sure the upside is quite there. I don't think he's a terrible play. Obviously, this Red Sox lineup is a little bit watered down. I do prefer lefties against them in general. Obviously, Eflin pitches from the right side, so doesn't have that advantage. But two solid pitchers here. I prefer the Crawford side between the two. I don't think I'm going to go to a ton of bats in this one, but where do you stand, JT? Red Sox and Rays to kick us off.
Yeah, you mentioned the pitching on this slate. Only one pitcher on the slate with an xFIP under 3, and he's in one of the last games of the night. Now that we've confirmed that he is actually pitching tonight, perhaps a little bit of gamesmanship out of the Dodgers as they face San Francisco for that rivalry tonight. But I agree with you on Cutter Crawford. I like him here. I think the price is a little higher than I would ordinarily like to pay for what we've seen so far, with a little bit more or a little bit less run prevention than we'd like to see. But as you mentioned, the Rays can help you get right here with their swing and miss tendencies. So I like Crawford. The only argument you'd make for Eflin is the fact that their bullpen got pretty much destroyed and has been getting destroyed. And Tyler Alexander did not go very long yesterday in that matchup with the Yankees. But if he makes a couple of my lineups, he makes a couple of my lineups fine. I'd actually, because of the Rays bullpen, actually don't mind getting exposure to the Boston Red Sox here on this slate. I think there's some interesting plays on the Red Sox side, but overall, not a ton of interest in this first game of the evening for me outside of Cutter Crawford.
Yeah, we mentioned it before plenty of times in the show, but that Rays bullpen, not the juggernaut it used to be. In fact, it is a bullpen to target these days. A big change from what we've seen for most of the last 3 or 4 years out of the Rays pen. That's Boston and Tampa. Let's get to Philadelphia and the New York Mets up next. Very similar weather here in New York that we had in Boston. Sean Manaea, Christopher Sanchez, two lefties on the hill, both priced in the 7K range. Sanchez sitting at 7,900, Manaea 7,200. It's been kind of up and down for Christopher Sanchez. Had a little bit of a breakout last year. He's been decent. And then Manaea, kind of the same thing. Had 2 good starts to open the season. Has been kind of shaky since then. I'm not really a huge believer in either of these pitchers. This game, pretty much a toss-up, 7.5 total. I don't know. I'm kind of lukewarm on this game, really, overall. There's not a ton of bats that I really want to play in New York. It is decent enough hitting weather. No JT Realmuto or Kyle Schwarber in the lineup for Philly, which does, of course, weaken their lineup a little bit, especially in the power department. I could see using either of these guys, Manaea or Sanchez. Neither of them made my top 5 or 6 pitchers. But outside of some value bats, Whit Merrifield leading off 3,200 against Manaea, I think is a pretty solid play. I'm sure it'll be popular. Castellanos is catching fire. And then even some of those guys, Sosa, Rojas at the bottom of the lineup have hit decently well recently. So I guess the Phillies side, I think I prefer to the Mets. But yeah, I mean, Lindor, Alonso, JD Martinez, I think they're all fine plays. I don't really see anything here, though, that's really sticking out that I want to, kind of force into my lineups or anything like that. What about you, JT? Second game of the night here, Phillies and Mets.
This is one of those games, and there's going to be a couple of them on this slate because it is 12 games. It just nothing stands out, right? Like, yeah, I won't actively remove. I'm playing a bunch of 150 lineup contests. I'm not going to actively remove Sanchez or Minaya, but I'm going nowhere above field level on those guys. And I honestly, I'll probably be below the field on them. The absence of Schwarber and Real Muto is, somewhat blunted by the fact that there is some speed on this Philadelphia team, and teams, DC, I know you track this at least as close, if not a lot closer than I do. Teams have been running wild on the combination of Omar Narvaez and Thomas Nido while Francisco Alvarez is healing up. So I think the Phillies are an interesting stack at perhaps somewhat lower ownership on the big slate here. And then the Mets, if I get a couple of stacks in my pool, that's fine. Not going crazy with them. That bullpen in Philly seems to have at least shored up, if not completely solidified at this point in the season.
Yeah, Minaya has given up 5 steals on the year. So, yeah, the Phillies certainly have some speed. Merrifield at the top, like I mentioned. Already a discount, can play him at 2 positions. I'm sure he'll be maybe not one of the most popular players, but he'll be up there, I think, in terms of ownership, just with the leadoff spot and the platoon matchup and the running matchup, all that good stuff. But I do like Whit Merrifield, probably my overall favorite play in this game, followed by Nick Castellanos. Quick one there with the Phillies and Mets. Not a whole ton to talk about. Let's go to Atlanta and Chicago Cubs. Ronaldo Lopez continues to get the job done for the most part. Last 2 outings, 14 fantasy points in each of them. Again, not what you're looking for, certainly at 9,700. It also won't kill you to get that. I think he is kind of coming back to earth as expected, right? Like, he's still been awesome overall, but there's just no way he could continue the run that he was on. And, even now, his ERA is sitting at 1.5. That's not going to last forever. But he does have a pretty decent matchup here. Like you said, kind of cool weather for this time of year in Atlanta. So it should play fairly pitcher-friendly tonight. I don't believe we have the Cubs lineup yet, but it is a decent enough matchup. They've kind of cooled off after a hot start to the year. They did get Suzuki and Bellinger back recently. So, I don't know. Ronaldo Lopez, 9,700. I'm not inclined really to pay that price tag myself, but then again, I really haven't played all that much Ronaldo Lopez yet. I kind of feel like I've missed the boat, early on when he was cheap and crushing. So I don't think I'm going to jump on the Lopez train. And then Imanaga versus the Braves is interesting. Imanaga has been fantastic. Him and Yamamoto, both on this slate, both have been amazing coming over from Japan here in their rookie years. I do think this is the toughest matchup once you consider the lineup and the park and everything else that Imanaga has had so far. He does give up a lot of fly balls, and the worry with him coming over was that he was going to have a home run problem. And this obviously is a lineup that could come to fruition. No Austin Riley in the lineup for the Braves is certainly, you go from Austin Riley to Zach Short is a pretty big downgrade, obviously. But the Braves, for the most part, really haven't hit for that much power. Acuna, what's he stuck on? 3 home runs, Albies, Olsen, like none of these. Michael Harris hasn't done that much. So it's been a little bit of a slow start for the Braves offensively outside of Ozuna, who's just absolutely carrying the offense all year long. Up to the 3-hole tonight is Ozuna, by the way. So I don't know. I'm curious to hear your thoughts on Imanaga. Kind of leaning not going there myself, but man, he has been pretty much nails almost every single start. Did have one sort of rough one, but not even really against the Dodgers. Got rained out. So actually he was good in that one. Just didn't get only threw 43 pitches. So Yeah, talk to me about Imanaga versus the Braves. I think it's a really interesting question. And then any interest in Lopez or bats in this game?
Yeah, I mean, don't sell Zach short because he did do enough to knock Benair out of first place in Showdown last night once he came in as a pinch hitter, one of the wildest things that you'll see in a Showdown contest. But look, I wanted to like Imanaga a lot more. You mentioned that Austin Riley left last night's game with a side issue, not in the lineup tonight. And he strikes me as a pitcher very much in the same vein as Ranger Suarez, who the Braves really have a difficult time with. Up and down the entire lineup. The team isn't really gelling offensively yet. And the loss of Riley is a significant loss in the middle of that lineup. But I think both these pictures have a little bit of regression coming. For Imanaga, a 239 average on batted balls hit against him, and then 91% of runners left on base. I don't know that it's going to happen tonight, but I wanted to, just because his numbers make him very close to Yamamoto, and he's only showing about a third of the ownership. So I really wanted to like him a lot more to kind of flip that or bring him even with Yamamoto, but I can't make the case for it. I'll definitely have him in my pool and probably more than the 10% that he's showing right now, but I just don't feel very confident in it. I feel that maybe he is going to have one of those down games coming up here, and it could be this evening. I just can't go the 9,700 for Ronaldo Lopez. I like what he's been doing this season. He too, stranding 89% of base runners. Now, some of that you'll say is a very, very good Braves defense, but I find myself with a little bit less interest here in the pitchers, and not necessarily DC because I want to play these offenses a ton. It's just kind of a game that I don't see a ton outside of maybe just going a bit over the field on Imanaga.
Yeah, it makes sense. I'll make sure to get some Marcell Ozuna in my lineup, and I'm going to sprinkle in those Braves too. Like I mentioned, I do think home runs are going to be a problem for Imanaga going forward. But, maybe mostly like when we get to those Wrigley win games where the wind's blowing out, it's hot in Wrigley Field that are coming up now that we're, getting middle of May. I'll be in on some power hitters against Imanaga. And again, I'm going to include Ozuna. I'm going to sprinkle in Braves. Ozzy Albies, obviously a lefty crusher. And so, kind of with you. I think matching the field on Imanaga 10% feels about right. He's just been so good. It's like, and on a bad pitching slate, why not 10%? I'm probably not going much higher than that myself, though. Next game on the slate is the Nationals and White Sox. This is, in my eyes, by far the riskiest game on the slate for weather. Kind of scheduled to be raining most of the night in Chicago. It is warm enough and all that, so it is just kind of the rain that we're watching. Obviously, 2 hours and 40 minutes here away from lock time. Kind of hard to say for certain, but if you do play this game, Nationals and White Sox, make sure you keep an eye on the weather and be ready to, have a plan. Obviously, plenty of games after this one to swap to if you need to. But, did want to mention the weather issue. But let's talk about it if it's going to play. Trevor Williams pitching for the Nationals. I can't believe this guy's still getting it done. He's stolen some DC bucks, that's for sure, as Trevor Williams. Still not really a believer in his, to be honest. But, man, he hasn't really had a bad start pretty much all year now. Most of them are right around 15 to 18 fantasy points. He did drop 30 with 8 strikeouts on Baltimore of all teams last time out. So talk to me about Trevor Williams. Are you buying into what he's doing? He's 7,300. It is the White Sox, who are obviously one of the better matchups in all of baseball for pitching. So I get why people are looking at Trevor Williams. I still, myself, am going to have trouble pulling that trigger, even if the weather looks good. And then, Chris Flexen pitching for the White Sox. He's not very good either. Again, another pitcher who I think is pitching over his head a little bit. So these are two pitchers that generally I kind of want to target hitters against. But, so far they've been pretty solid. What are your thoughts here? Williams, Flexen, White Sox, and Nationals.
Yeah, I'll start with the weather, right? It does look like there's rain in and around the area the entire evening, anywhere from a 30 to a 70% chance at certain time periods. So right there, it makes it easy for me to not consider either one of these pitchers, to be honest. I wasn't really considering either one of them whatsoever. Trevor Williams finally got the big spike game, his 30-point game. I'm definitely not playing him after he does that. And Flexen, just no thank you. So I did have a little bit more interest in the White Sox for the reason that you mentioned, that I think that people would have seen this matchup, and they've been a lot better, not just a little better, but a lot better since they got Tommy Pham into that lineup, and Eloy Jimenez has come back, and they've been at least interesting for DFS purposes. Yeah. They're cheap enough, and they've been hitting enough that, one, they've been getting other lineups with other really upside players into the top 1-2% in some contests, but also they've been busting opposing pitchers. So I wasn't going near this pitching matchup in terms of using those pitchers, and the weather makes it makes it enough so that I will leave 5-man stacks in my pool, but I will eliminate them as much as I can. Certainly not going to have any 2 or 3-man stacks, and try to eliminate any one-offs from this team. I may have to run a separate pool for this game just to get a couple of those stacks in there in case the weather cooperates. But like you mentioned, very, very tough right now, a few hours before lock, to predict whether or not that game's going to be able to play without interruption. Certainly it could play with interruption and finish late.
Yeah, did you talk about the national side? I think they, at least in my eyes, are kind of the more interesting side here. They've shown some signs of life. Eddie Rosario, yeah, Alex says Rosario on a massive heater. He's been amazing recently. I'm not sure I totally buy into that. Outside of games, these guys are really cheap. Rosario up to the 3-hole at 2,600. Meneses, Luis Garcia, they're hitting a little bit. Nationals got a little bit of spunk. They can also steal bases. You have any interest on that side of the ball?
Yeah, I do have some. They are projecting right now, believe it or not, on a 12-game slate as the highest owned stack for that reason, that they are so cheap. But I do think that with the weather, I'll have 5-man stacks of the Nats. I won't be close to the 10% mark that the field looks to be on them at right now. But I'm going to avoid having a lot of lineups with holes if this game for some reason gets scrapped in the second inning, and just keep them as 5-mans, try and limit them from the rest of the pool.
Yeah, we talk about that a lot. These risky weather games, it's best just to go all in on any individual lineup, and then you don't want these guys sprinkled out your lineups and ruining 30% of your lineups with some one-offs, whatever. So good point there. Let's get to Pittsburgh and Milwaukee, my personal favorite game on the slate, at least for bats. Colin Rea, Mitch Keller pitching. Rea for the Brewers, obviously Keller for the Pirates. I think 2 overrated pitchers here. Keller, he had that awesome start to last season, faded down the stretch. He is coming off a very good outing against the Angels where he went the full 9. Complete game, 1 earned run. Did you get up to 109 pitches in that one? 31.2 DraftKings points against the Angels. Still need 5 strikeouts, so obviously had some good fortune his way, but still his best start of the year. But for the most part, he's been pretty shaky this year. He's hittable. I kind of think the same thing about Colin Rea. I've seen some love for him in the chat, but I'm just not really buying what Rea is doing so far. And then my favorite thing about this game and why I'm so high on it, both these pitchers extremely easy to steal bases against. And we've got 2 teams, especially the Brewers, who absolutely love to run. The Brewers 3rd in baseball in steals. And that's, Turang running wild, but nobody else is going crazy. It's just kind of all of their guys are stealing bases. They got Christian Yelich back recently. I don't know if you've looked into what he's doing. He looks to have made some real changes this year to his, I think the swing path is what he changed. And he looks like the MVP version of Christian Yelich that we saw, that must be 4 or 5 years ago at this point. So he's one of my favorite players on the slate, but I'm on, anyone with speed, really, from both these teams. From the Pirates, that's mostly the 2-3-4, Reynolds, Cruz, Sawinski, I think is a really fun 3-man stack. Colin Rea last year at least gave up a ton of home runs to lefty bats. All 3 of those guys either swing from the left side or switch hitters. And then on the Brewers side, man, pretty much everybody in that lineup I have interest in. especially the top four. Contreras stealing bases as a catcher. He's been awesome this year. I talked about Yelich. Turang, I believe, is second in the entire league in steals. We know what Adames can do. He can run as well. I think he's got 7 on the year. So I'm extremely high on the Brewers. And then I like the Pirates as well, but more kind of selective on who I'm going to. I do think you can include McCutchen, and then Nick Gonzalez, one of their top prospects, is cheap in the 5-hole. So I'm expecting runs in this game. I think we could see a bunch of steals. And, man, when you do get that right, when you get a stack and you get double steals, you get a base hit knocking 2 guys in, you can really start to rack up points in a hurry. And then you just need like the one more rally, or a home run or 2 to kind of push that stack to the top. So very, very high on the offenses here. I'm not playing either pitcher. I do think some people will end up playing Colin Ray here. It won't be me. But, yeah, talk to us, JT, Pirates and Brewers.
Yeah, I'm with you on the Brewers. A couple of people were talking about this in Discord that, some of these next starts after a pitcher overextends themselves. And certainly 109 pitches, going the distance, in absolute the best game, close to the best game that Mitch Keller will ever have as a big league pitcher. You expect a little bit of a fall off in this next start, not to mention it's against one of the best offenses in baseball. They have been absolutely crushing the ball over the last couple of weeks. And then you add in the fact that the Pirates played an extra inning game last night. So a lot of those, or yesterday afternoon, I should say. So a lot of those bullpen pitchers are going to be a little bit tired, and we may see some secondary arms in terms of quality from the Pirates. So I'm with you 100% on the Brewers. The Pirates, I can make a case for Colin Ray. He's got a 4.5K prop juiced to the over at 7,100 on a slate where, Randy Vasquez is going to be the second highest owned pitcher. And I certainly don't trust that, even though I understand Rockies away from home. So I want to find pivots that don't have me overextended on Randy Vasquez, right? And I think Colin Ray could be one of those guys where he could get you 15, 16. If the Brewers put up the amount of runs that we expect them to, they run around the bases, hit a couple of home runs, he could get a win bonus as well. So I'm in on Colin Ray a little bit on DraftKings for sure. I'm out on Keller. And Pirates will be in my pool, but my team in this game that I prefer much more is the Brewers.
Yeah, I particularly love O'Neal Cruz there, 4,500, hitting third. He's heating up a little bit, and, of course, the running matchup against Ray is really good. So Brewers and Pirates, my favorite game for offense, particularly on the Brewers side. Glad to hear you're with me on that one. All right, Texas and Cleveland up next. 9 total in this one. It is in Texas. Roof should be closed tonight. Michael Lorenzen, Tanner Bybee on the bump. Not a ton of interest in either of these pitchers. It's been a disappointing start to the season for Bybee, who was a breakout pick for some. Hasn't really come to fruition, at least so far. And then Michael Lorenzen. We kind of know who he is. He's pitched exactly 6 innings in 4 straight starts. He does have a propensity to give up the long ball, give up a home run or 2 in all of those starts. And, yeah, Cleveland is a team that I do like to stack. All those lefties against the righty Lorenzen makes sense. Lorenzen does have some reverse splits this year, but I think overall he's more of a neutral type pitcher. So I like the look of these Guardians. They are kind of crazy expensive, right? Like Andres Gimenez, I'm not sure what he's really done to be priced all the way up at 5,200. But yeah, they do have some cheaper guys. Brennan, 3,600. Manzardo there. If you want to skip over Naylor at first base is 2,200. So yeah, I like the Guardians, not nearly as much as the Brewers. And I think the Rangers are interesting too. They did have pretty disappointing series overall in Coors Field. But back home, maybe they get back on track. I like the Guardians side better myself. What about you, JT, Rangers and Guardians?
Yeah, no Michael Lorenzen for me. It looks like the league has caught up to him. They certainly did the second half of last season, and it looked like even though he's had a couple of decent starts, the first half, I'm not really interested in him against the Guardians. I am interested in Tanner Bybee a little bit. He has been disappointing, certainly his last couple of starts, his last start in particular. I played him. I didn't play him the game he dominated the Braves in Atlanta. And he's done this. He's pitched well against really good teams. Now, for those of you that watched the series in Colorado, you wouldn't believe that Texas is a really good team, but they are a really good offense. And I do think that BB is interesting here at lower ownership. So I'll have some of him in the pool, not a ton of Texas. You don't usually see teams excited to get out of Colorado and then do better right away. So I do like Tanner Beebe a little bit here. I like the Guardians. I'm with you there. No Lorenzen for me. Very little Texas.
Yeah, I think we are on the same page there. Let's get to Oakland and Houston up next. The Astros do have the highest team total on the slate, sitting around 4.8, 4.9 runs. Could get up to 5. I wouldn't be surprised by the time this game starts. Spencer Arrighetti pitching for the Astros. Looks like he's going to get some ownership, which I don't know. Interested to hear your thoughts on that. I know it's Oakland, but like they haven't been that bad recently. And I mean, Arrighetti's been awful. He's made I think 5 starts, allowing over 2 base runners per inning, an ERA close to an earned run per inning as well. Doesn't really get all that many strikeouts. I mean, I don't really see it with Arrighetti despite the matchup against Oakland. And frankly, if that many people are playing Oakland or playing Arrighetti, I might jump on some Oakland stacks as leverage. Not a bad hitting environment in Houston. And then they've got power, man. I mean, like Rooker's doing, Blade hit the home run. I think Oakland is interesting as a contrarian stack. And then Ross Stripling pitching for the Oakland A's. Kind of know who he is at this point. Doesn't miss a ton of bats. A pitcher to target in general, I would say, including with this Astros team, who I do think could do some serious damage here. I like the lefties in particular, Tucker, Alvarez, Singleton, and no Luperfido in the lineup tonight. But yeah, I like offense here, and I'm probably going to full fade Arrighetti at that ownership and no interest in Stripling for me. What about you, JT? Oakland and Houston.
Yeah, Oakland, the third or fourth most home runs in Major League Baseball, a stat that I saw yesterday. Definitely a ton of power, and I've been playing them. I think now they have been a little bit of a Jekyll and Hyde team. There are certainly days and nights where they'll strike out a bunch, but it's difficult to see Spencer Arrighetti being the guy that actually does that. And like you said, combined with the ownership. So I like them. I like the Astros a bit. I mean, Ross Stripling is 15% strikeout rate and sort of towards the back end here of his days pitching in the league. So I think this is a game where you can play both offenses. And I myself am not going to end up on any shares of Ross Stripling, and I don't think I'm going to have any shares of Arrighetti either. There's just not enough control or discipline yet to really feel comfortable playing him. And on this 12-game slate, I think there are other spots I'm going to try to attack. Yeah,
I'm not really sure why Arrighetti's projecting well at it. Obviously, it's just kind of the matchup, and it is a low team total for the A's. So I guess the market maybe thinks Arrighetti's better than we do, but yeah, a decent ownership. He's not even that cheap, right? 7,200. He's been awful. I personally don't see it, but maybe Arrighetti, has his first good start of the year. Let's get to St. Louis and the LA Angels up next. Over to the West Coast we go for these last 5 games. Jose Soriano pitching for the Angels here. I think he's an interesting arm on this slate. He's very cheap, 6,500 on DraftKings, 7,400 on FanDuel. He's very much a boomer bust pitcher, and I think he will continue to be one for the foreseeable future. One of the hardest throwers in baseball, but does not always know where it's going. His secondary stuff isn't that great. I do think he's got upside on, really any slate. He had one of his better games against Cleveland. But it's kind of tough because I think his outcomes are mostly just dependent on if he can throw strikes or not. I think if he throws strikes, he's going to have a good game most of the time, especially against this Cardinals team, one that we've been picking on really all year long. They just can't hit. I mean, even their good hitters, Goldschmidt, I know he hit the home run yesterday. Arenado, just not doing a ton this year. They obviously lost Wilson Contreras, one of the top catchers in baseball, They got Matt Carpenter back in the lineup on some nights now. It's rough for St. Louis. So I'm absolutely willing to play Soriano at 6,500. I do think he's one of the better point per dollar pitchers on the slate. Yes, a lot of risk for sure with Soriano. And I was kind of surprised to see him projected below 10% ownership at the couple places I look, because I like him a lot. So I'll be definitely over the field on that 10% number. Liberatore pitching for the Cardinals. I don't think he's really in play. Yeah, he pitched back on the 10th. So he's going to be, a couple of innings here, probably most likely for Liberatore, and then a bullpen game for St. Louis, which that looks good for the Angels too. I obviously don't love this lineup with no Mike Trout, but we have seen Joe Adell swinging a good bat. Taylor Ward can hit decently from the right side. Kevin Pillar's cheap. O'Hoppe, a decent catcher. So maybe Zach Neto still cheap. So yeah, maybe some interest in the Angels here. I just don't really play the Cardinals, and I probably won't be doing it tonight. But yeah, I like the Angels side, both hitting and pitching wise. What about you, JT? Cardinals and Angels.
Yeah, I actually wanted to like Jose Soriano a lot more just because he's at that same price point as Vasquez, but I do like him. He, has that same 5.5 K prop that Vasquez has, just a little bit of difference on the value there. So they obviously think that the market thinks there's some strikeouts here in this Cardinals lineup. We've seen that. And so I'll have some of him, more than the 4% that he's projected for sure. And yeah, Liberatore, his last start went 2/3 of an inning because he's just terrible. He's not ready for the big leagues. And this bullpen isn't one of the best in baseball. It's probably a little bit worse than middle of the road. So Angels not my favorite team here. Maybe, more minis than full stacks, but certainly think you can get a couple of these guys into your lineup. So I'll be a little bit heavier than Field on Soriano, not touching any of the Cardinals pitchers, minimal interest, almost no interest in this Cardinals lineup. But yes, same as you, a little bit of interest here in the Angels.
Yeah, we did just get the Angels lineup while you were talking there. And yeah, Joe Adell hitting second tonight. Ward is third, Pillar fourth, Hoppe fifth. I do like that 2 through 5 for the Angels, all those right-handed bats against Liberatore, quite a bit there. So yeah, I'll be mixing in the Angels for sure. Joel Adell, hard not to like it. Just red hot right now. It's got the power, got the speed, got the matchup. He's cheap. I'm sure he'll be one of the more popular bats on the slate, but I think deservedly so. Cincinnati and Arizona is the next game that we will talk about. Arizona, pretty big favorites in this one, sitting around minus 160. Jordan Montgomery pitching for the Arizona Diamondbacks. He's been kind of shaky to start the year. ERA sitting near 5. Had a really bad outing against the Dodgers. He's been, kind of Jordan Montgomery-ish. Other than that, he did just face this Reds team in his last start. Got through 7 innings, only 2 strikeouts, 2 walks in that one. Was an okay start for him. The swing and miss really hasn't been there for him early on. So, on paper, the strikeouts could be there here against Cincinnati, who does whiff a lot, but he didn't get them last time out. He is cheap at 7,500. I do think long-term he's a little bit better pitcher than that. So I could see buying into Montgomery. He is, as I said, a decent favorite. And then Graham Ashcraft pitching for the Reds. I believe they faced off back in Cincinnati in both of their last starts. Ashcraft was not great in that one. 5 innings, 3 earned runs, just 2 strikeouts. Hasn't had more than 4 strikeouts in any of his last 4 outings. You watch him pitch, and he seems like he should get strikeouts, but they just haven't really been there for Ashcraft. So I'm not playing Ashcraft at 7,600. Moderate interest in Montgomery. And yeah, I don't find myself really on the D-backs either, but they do have one of the higher team totals on the slate. So I assume they will end up getting some ownership. What's your interest in the D-backs bats and anything else in this game, JT?
Yeah, I played Montgomery when he faced off against the Reds in Cincinnati. I got made fun of a good bit. He finished because he got the win with 14 and a half DraftKings points. And it wasn't a great performance. And you look, early on, it's clear that he's not in game shape at 100% yet, right? I mean, an 11% strikeout rate. He's never been a huge strikeout pitcher, but 11% is extremely low for him. Now, this game is in a park that we do like to target for pitching on occasion. I mean, the reality is you've got two offenses that can go off any given night. And the one thing that I do like about Cincinnati is they will just run the bases. I mean, they are trying to steal on the opposing pitcher. They don't really care if they get caught or not. And that's always good for DFS. So both these stacks are in my pool. I don't have a strong lean on either one of them. So probably not my primary pool of stacks, but definitely in the pool. And mild interest in Montgomery, just in case this is the game that he starts to get it right. Again, we're dealing with a lot of very low projections, a lot of shaky pitchers, and the longer-term track record on Montgomery is good enough for me to not X him out of the pool.
All right. That's D-backs in Cincinnati. Probably won't play Ellie De La Cruz against Montgomery. Tough to run on, swinging from the right side. But, yeah, that's Reds and D-backs. Last 3 games to talk about. Then we'll do stacks, pitchers, home runs, and overall play of the day. Hit the like button if you haven't yet done so. We've got a good crew watching today. And, yeah, we got everything you need over at Run Pier Sports. Promo code DC15 will get you 15% off your first weekly or monthly payment. All right, Kansas City and Seattle are up next. This one in Seattle, one of the better pitching environments in the game from night to night. George Kirby pitching for Seattle, $9K feels like a pretty good price point for him against this Royals team, who I think have one of the, if not the lowest, maybe second lowest team total on the entire slate. Man, these Mariners pitchers, just pitching them at home and avoiding them on the road is like, it's just such a simple rule. But if you follow it, if you look at the last couple of years, man, it's really worked out for the most part. Something I try to do, and I'll be doing tonight. So I do think Kirby, pretty solid play here at 9K. We saw the big upside from him against Arizona 3 starts ago. Of course, that did come in Seattle. 42 DraftKings points in that one. I'm not predicting that, but I do think Kirby could be in line for a big start. I'm seeing some love for Mr. Brady Singer. I get it against this Mariners squad, who I mentioned the other day, on pace to break the single season strikeout record. I'm just not a believer in Brady Singer. I know he's been pretty damn good this year. 8,800. I think he's going to get some ownership.
Yeah.
Yeah. Highest owned pitcher on the slate. Saber has him currently. No thanks on Super Chalk Brady Singer for me. Would much rather spend the extra 200 on Kirby. Honestly, seems weird that Singer would be higher owned to me, but yeah, that's Kirby, Singer, KC, and Seattle. Big decisions here to be made with 2 pretty popular pitchers. Where you at on this one, JT?
Yeah, I think, and we heard a little bit last start that maybe Kirby had a knee issue. Well, he went 5 innings. He wasn't particularly sharp, so it looks like he's fine. In on Kirby, and I think I'm with you on Singer here. He's always been a bit better at home, if not much, much better at home. Of course, matchup dependent sometimes, where these teams in the AL Central are not very good. And then he's another guy that I think there's some regression coming his way. A 233 average on balls hit in play against him and an 85% left on base rate. I think given the 20+% ownership on Singer tonight, I'd rather take some chances on hitting a night where the power of Seattle gets going and gets into a couple of these balls. They had some life, at least in Minnesota. Of course, not a great series, but certainly Cal Raleigh is hitting. Mitch Haniger looks like he's heating up. Jorge Polanco has really been good most of the season. And so I would rather take shots on them. So in on Kirby, most likely completely out on Singer. I'm going to either, like you said, either get up to Kirby, get up to Yamamoto, maybe even get up to some of my Shota Imanaga shares and fade a very popular guy who on the road has struggled and is probably over-owned here in this spot because of the issues that the Mariners have had with striking out.
They'll be higher than this, but the ownership projections on the Seattle Bats are ridiculous. They've got Julio Rodriguez and Camporeale between 1% and 2%, and everybody else in the entire lineup below 1% owned against a pitcher who, man, I mean, I think Singer, like, legitimately is just a, number 3 or number 4 arm. He's not someone that you need to avoid. And I know you mentioned it. Seattle absolutely has issues with strikeouts. I use pitchers against them all the time. They also have plenty of power in the lineup. I know Julio hasn't gotten going yet. There's no questioning his talent. Raleigh, one of the best power hitting catchers.
Julio hit a home run yesterday.
Yeah.
Julio's going to start to come out of this. And the other thing about Kansas City, their bullpen by the numbers, last 2 weeks, entire season, not very good. Not very good. Yeah. So if they can get to Singer early, this could be a night where your 1% stack is coming out of the Pacific Northwest.
Yeah, I got 4 main teams, and I'm going to sprinkle those Mariners in. Yeah, you don't even need to go with the full-on stack, right? When they're so low owned, just pick a one or two off, get the home run, and get out of there. I think might be the best approach for Seattle. But at that level of ownership against I think a mediocre pitcher, full stack does make sense as well. Last 2 games to talk about: Colorado and San Diego. Up first. We've mentioned Randy Vasquez a few times in passing during the show. He does look like he's going to be one of the more popular pitchers on the slate going for San Diego. You certainly understand why. He's by no means, in my opinion, a great pitcher, but he gets the Rockies, at home in San Diego, and most importantly, of course, outside of Coors Field. The Rockies really haven't even hit that well inside of Coors Field, but you take them out, and they're just regularly, in that split, right? Away from home, the worst team offensively in the league. And looking at this lineup, I think that's probably true at the moment. I do think this team outside of Coors Field is worse than, the White Sox or whoever else the A's, whoever else you want to pit them against. So, yeah, Vasquez, I get it. He did throw 97 pitches back on April 20th, 83 in his last time out. His one bad start did actually come against Colorado, but of course that was in Coors Field. So, different story here. I know you're a little bit wary of this chalk, JT. Vasquez looking like he might be, 25% owned, something like that, which I personally think is fair. I'm going to play some Vasquez for sure. I'm not going to go all in or anything like that. And then San Diego, you don't often see this in a game in San Diego, but they do have one of the higher, I think second highest team total on the slate against Dakota Hudson, who's obviously not any good. And that Padres lineup has been coming alive a little bit recently. Not sure I can get on board as the second best offense on this slate, but I get why. Your thoughts here, Colorado and San Diego.
Yeah, I'm a lot wary of Randy Vasquez. A couple of reasons. I mean, he had his last game out, he had a good game, but before that, it's really all over the place with limited control and limited innings. And the other thing is they got a great start from Yu Darvish. Actually, the Padres got really great starting pitching all weekend long against the Dodgers of all teams. So the bullpen is pretty fresh. So if Vasquez goes 5 innings, I think they're probably happy tonight. Can he get enough in 5 innings at that price point? He certainly can. But again, I've been searching, trying to find a pivot to him. I'm not going to fully fade him just because the matchup is absolutely great with the Rockies coming out of Colorado, plus being on the road. But I wouldn't be surprised if the Rockies got to him either. So I don't want a ton of him. I don't want to be at that 25% mark. And then as far as the offenses, I'm not going to have a lot of Colorado just because I don't love Vasquez. Doesn't mean that I'm going to go chase one of those rare Colorado performances on the road, good performances on the road. And San Diego will be in my pool. I don't have a really strong feeling on them. The Rockies bullpen has actually been a little bit better. And, of course, judging by what we saw over the weekend in Texas. So I don't feel a need to be chasing after the Padres here, who haven't really been firing on all cylinders either. Much like the Braves, they'll get a couple of home runs and good pitching, and it's been enough so far this season to keep them in the mix, but they haven't really they've had a couple, but not a ton of breakout games.
Yeah, all figure there. Sports Better says, 7 righties throws a sweeper. It does look like a pretty good spot for Vasquez.
Yeah.
That said, he still is Randy Vasquez, and there's certainly no guarantee here. So I can see it both ways on that one. I kind of tend to lean toward playing him. I also wouldn't be surprised if his ownership comes in even higher than projected.
Yeah.
He kind of looks free squarish, right? At that price point, that team total. And of course, any pitcher can go wrong for, so Zach Wheeler of all people. But of course,
sorry to interrupt. He's got that same K prop. It's 5.5 minus 115. Yeah. Again, Soriano is going to be 1/6 of the ownership with the same K prop and just $500 more. They're the same risk, DC, right? I mean, would you say that Vasquez versus Soriano, either one of them is more risky than the other?
I do think Soriano is a bigger risk just because I trust his command less, but
not a 22% risk.
100%. I think Soriano, if their ownership projections prove correct, and we know for sure Vasquez is going to be way higher owned than Soriano. Just a matter of how much that is. But I'm with you. I'll take the ownership discount on Soriano there. And I think Soriano is riskier. I do think he's the higher upside pitcher. If you told me one guy is going to get 8+ strikeouts, it would definitely be Soriano that I'd be betting on. So, I'm with you. I think Soriano, the preferred play once you take into account the ownership. Last game of the night, Dodgers game.
Yeah. No, I was just going to say with the Angels too, a weaker bullpen than San Diego and a bullpen that's been used a lot more this weekend in their series against Kansas City. Argument for Soriano's length. Yeah,
makes total sense. Dodgers and San Francisco, last game on the slate, this one in San Francisco. Jordan Hicks pitching for the Giants. He's been pretty damn good, especially real life-wise. He doesn't get that many strikeouts, but he has been solid, 7,800. I'm not playing him here against the Dodgers. Just no thanks. Doesn't get that many strikeouts, and we know what this Dodgers team can do, even in San Francisco. I don't think we've seen the lineup yet. Shohei Ohtani did miss yesterday's game with, I believe, a sore back. Projected most places to be in the lineup today, so we'll see. Obviously, Hicks' matchup would become much better with no Ohtani in there. And then Yamamoto, who I think it's both of our SP1. If you take, pricing, ownership, everything out of the equation, I certainly do project him to have the most fantasy points. When it's all said and done, he has been, good to very good in all of his starts since that first outing in South Korea. We've talked about it, just pretty much writing that one off at this point. Still hasn't had the true breakout game, hasn't actually gotten to 30 fantasy points yet, which is pretty crazy given how consistent he's been. I do think those bigger games are coming for him at some point, JT, and this would be a good spot to have one. You mentioned the injuries that the Giants have suffered, lost Conforto, and who else did they lose?
Jorge Soler is on the IL as well.
Yeah, Jorge Soler. This back half of this lineup is really kind of bare bones. I mean, their best hitter is what? Lamont Wade. It's rough for San Francisco. So you got to like Yamamoto here. He is expensive. He will be pretty popular, but I think deservedly so. Not playing any Giants against him, and probably not going to go to a ton of Dodgers either. Ohtani would be the one exception just because he's just such a game-breaking talent. But not stacking the Dodgers up against Jordan Hicks, who really hasn't been I don't think he's allowed more than 300 runs in any start the entire season. So I don't see going crazy with the Dodgers here myself. But what about you? Dodgers and Giants.
Yeah, we all know about this ballpark and how it favors pitching. And, Yamamoto at, 30, 35% ownership isn't it's not one of those nights where you have him at like 55 or 60, right? Because you would think that maybe he should be higher just because of the talent level and the consistency that we've seen. So Yamamoto, for me, not a ton of interest, certainly not in the Giants offense here. And then really not a lot of interest in the Dodgers like you. They'll be in my pool, no doubt, for stacks, but we don't often stack in this ballpark. So I'll take Yamamoto as my greatest interest in this game by far.
Yeah, I'm right with you there. Awesome play tonight, and I hope that ownership holds true. It does seem like that should be higher, at least in our eyes. All right, let's get to the fun stuff. Favorite stack, favorite contrarian stack is up first. I will go ahead and go first on this one. I mentioned it earlier, but Brewers by far my favorite stack. Both the hitting and especially the running matchup against Mitch Keller looks very, very strong here. And I think the Brewers are the highest upside stack on this slate. Contrarian for me is the same game. The Pirates against Colin, who have a similar good power and speed matchup. I do prefer the Brewer side for sure, but Pirates I think will be contrarian, and I do think they could do some damage as well. Over to you, JT, for your favorite stack and favorite contrarian stack.
Yeah, we talked about it during that game. I like the Brewers as well, but I want to give a different stack than you, as much as we agree on our shows now, which I don't know what that says about how far we've come, DC, but I'm going to go with Oakland. You can't forget, too, how bad this bullpen is for the Houston Astros. And since they changed the batter's eye in center field, there's a lot of runs that are being scored in Minute Maid Park, and I think we're going to see some tonight. As far as contrarian stack, again, like the call with the Brewers, I don't mind the Pirates, but I'm going to go with Seattle. I'm going to attack that pitcher ownership and take a chance that this series over the weekend help them move in the right direction, starting to get right here, and see if they can get some runs up on Kansas City.
Yeah, I'll be getting some Seattle in my lineups for sure as well. Most important pitcher, kind of define this as the pitcher you think you'd be most over the field on. I think we might have the same answer to this one. I'll let you go first, JT.
It's probably going to be I'm probably going to have the same amount, DC, of Yamamoto and Kirby. And then, like I mentioned, I think other pitchers that I'm going to take more shots on than the field are Imanaga and Soriano.
Yeah, the answer is Soriano for me, 6,500 against St. Louis on a day where you can certainly use the savings on some bats. And, yeah, you could pair him up with Yamamoto, who I do think is the best pitcher on this slate. He's expensive, but he does make for a nice pairing with the cheap Soriano. Let's get a home run call, JT. I'll give you the first crack at this one.
Julio Rodriguez tonight is gonna have. I haven't seen if anyone's coring Brady Singer. I know that we have our resident Royals expert and fan AP in there, but he usually doesn't like Singer on the road. So I would say that he's probably not going to be on him tonight. So it won't be necessarily, DC, the same level of tilt that we saw yesterday when the Marlins scored a bunch of runs in the second inning. But interested to see the tilt here. Brady Singer does not get off to a good start.
Absolutely. My home run call, I'm going to actually stick with your Mariners there. Camporeale, hitting cleanup.
There you go.
Big power hitting catcher. Big dumper, they call him. I think he's going yard. Brady Singer. That's an awesome nickname. All right, let's wrap it up with our favorite overall hitter on the slate. I'll go first. I don't think I was stealing this one from you. Christian Yelich. Talked about some of the improvements that he's made this year. His underlying metrics are off the charts. So are the real numbers. Missed some time with the back injury. But, I'm a big believer in Christian Yelich. Just kind of right now in general going to be playing a ton of him, and especially in this matchup, power and speed against Mitch Keller and a good ballpark to hit in Milwaukee. Christian Yelich, my play of the day. What about you, JT? Play of the day for the people.
Yeah, I'm gonna go with. Let me just take a quick look here. I need to just make sure that this is lineup. Yeah, he hasn't. He's had a couple of big games this season, and I like him as a player, and he's coming into his own as a hitter. Shea Langoliers. Shea Langoliers is my
spicy with those Oakland A's. I love it. A's and Mariners. Kind of see where your lineups might be trending tonight. Yeah. All right, that'll do it for the show. Fun one today. Appreciate all you guys watching. Hit the like button on your way out. The show will be back same time, same place tomorrow. Thanks to JT for joining me today. Good luck, everybody. Hopefully see some RPS logos up top tonight. For JT Hayes, I'm Draft Cheat. We're out of here.